Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm revealing 3 steps to get your husband to love you again. My guest, Karen, was tired of the constant tension between her husband and her grown sons from her first marriage. But she was really devastated when her husband came home from his out-of-state job and told her he was moving out. 12 months later, he told her there was another woman. But today, she says, their relationship is like it was in the beginning. Both of them are happier than they've ever been. She also got recognized for excellent work at her job. She's going to tell us how in the world she did all that so you can do it too. The Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award goes to an adage that's been recycled, regurgitated, and repeated ad infinitum. But it has never, ever been helpful for marital tranquility. And oh, look, here it comes again. All of that's coming up. But first, I'm going to reveal 3 steps to get your husband to love you again. If your husband stops loving you or says he never did, you can feel like your world is falling apart. It's a shock that's both heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching. How can you make your husband miss you badly? How do you get your husband to notice you sexually, especially when he'll barely give you the time of day? If you want to know how to make your husband fall in love with you again, here are 4 surefire ways to do that, even if it seems hopeless right now. Number 1, accept the things you can't change. And that doesn't mean you have to accept that he's not in love with you. It's more about using your energy wisely to make him fall in love with you again. Here's what I mean. When Elizabeth's husband said he wanted a divorce, she was terrified. What could she do to make him change his mind? She had some ideas like A, ask him to give her more time, or B, ask him to go to marriage counseling, or C, promise him she would change, or D, do nothing. The answer was D, do nothing. She couldn't make him do anything. She knew that she couldn't control him. So she decided to relinquish control completely. But who knew how sneaky, inappropriate control can be, right? I mean, from giving him disapproving looks to saying, we need to go to counseling. I mean, who wouldn't say that when faced with your marriage falling apart? Yet somehow, Elizabeth managed to quit worrying about what he was doing or not doing, quit trying to get him to do anything. Instead, she focused on herself with the discipline of a student, keeping her eyes on her own test paper at school. And the results were ridiculous. They had dinner together for the first time in months, and he stayed the night. And she said that they did a 180-degree turn and that it happened in just 1 week. Number 2, find the courage to change the things you can. Yenny's husband was asking for a divorce every single day. Her own mother told her to face facts that she was going to be getting divorced. Her husband had already packed his bags. Yenny was crying and begging, even trying to block the door. She wasn't feeling very dignified. Plus, she could see that her desperation was not serving her or making him want to stay. Clearly, she was willing to go to any length to save her marriage, so she did something big. She uttered these words to her husband. I apologize for being disrespectful for the past 10 years when I controlled your parenting, what to say, and what to eat. He didn't know what to make of that because in the past, when they'd had these unfortunate State of the Union talks, she always told him what he was doing wrong and how he should change it. So he was so surprised to get an apology, his head practically exploded in a good way. After she cleaned up her side of the street, not only did he step up to parent their kids and help with their homework, unlike when she had been trying to control his parenting, those divorce threats became a thing of the past. And now others actually ask Yenny, hey, why is your marriage so intimate? With the hurtful things your husband has said, chances are he owes you an apology. Maybe you've tried to get him to show some accountability and it's not working at all. Or even if it does and he mumbles a sorry that doesn't quite cut it for you. If you really want mutual respect in your relationship, why not go first and restore respect yourself? It's not so much about why he may feel disrespected, where the focus is back on him, but how you feel you've controlled or criticized or dismissed or demeaned him. Yep, this is yet another opportunity to get out of control land by keeping the focus on yourself. When you're ready to make your man's head spin, try this magic phrase. I apologize for being disrespectful when I, and then fill in the blank with something specific. And then leave it at that. No explanation is needed because now you're clean. Number 3, use your wisdom to know the difference. If you're not sure whether there's hope for your marriage, it's tempting to want to know what he thinks. If only he had that vital information of whether he thinks there's hope or what his intentions are, right? Well, when Barb's husband said, it's hard for me to see us together in the future, she certainly had the urge to have a State of the Union talk. She'd flown out to see him for the weekend, and they had a 10-hour drive ahead of them. It was the perfect opportunity for a big talk. But Barb knew that asking him questions like what he wanted was letting her eyes wander onto his paper, back in control territory. So she set aside her urge for a big talk and managed to stay off his paper. And get this, she decided to show up as her best, happiest self. Things turned around in unexpected ways. He surprised her with a nice stay in a fancy hotel. He kept asking her what she wanted to do and what she wanted to see. He got her a first-class seat on her plane ride home. And when she mentioned that she wanted a new computer, he suggested they go buy one immediately. But they never did. They were too busy enjoying physical intimacy to leave. Let me tell you a secret, the same one I told Barb. As the wife, you are the keeper of your relationship. So regardless of what he may be saying he wants right now, the far more important piece of information is what you want. What do you want? He said, I do to you, right? If he changed his mind once, well, he can change it again and fall back in love with you so that your marriage lasts and thrives and you feel taken care of, adored, and special. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest, Karen, was tired of the constant tension between her husband and her grown sons from her first marriage. But she was really devastated when her husband came home from his out-of-state job and told her he was moving out. 12 months later, he told her there was another woman. But today, she says, their relationship is like it was in the beginning. Her husband is loving, wants to please her at every opportunity, looks after her so well, and is always checking in to see that she's okay. Both of them are happier than they have ever been. She also got recognized for excellent work at her job, and she's going to tell us how in the world she did all this so that you can do it too. Karen, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Hello, Laura. I'm very excited to be here. It was one of my aims when I first joined your group, I think it was about 16 months ago now, was to actually be a guest and be interviewed by you. So I'm very excited to be here.
Well, that is so great. So this was part of your vision, was to be able to pay forward what you've learned on the podcast So this is really a victory lap of sorts, right? This is a celebration
Yeah.
of your incredible accomplishment. So I love that. So we're doing our happy dance together here. Yay. Okay. So, but let's start from the beginning though. Tell us about what was going wrong in the bad old days.
I honestly think out of all the calls that I'd listened to and all the research I did with your course, my situation was one of the worst that I thought that I had read. And it, oh gosh, at times I really had to push myself to keep on going. So it wasn't always, easy, definitely. So in the bad old days, there was lots of resentment. I was in the middle of my husband's, what would you call it? I guess unrest with my adult children. They didn't get along. They did when they were little, but once they kind of got a bit older, things deteriorated. And I felt like the meat in the sandwich. Neither side was going to budge. And it caused a lot of resentment on my part. There also was, I think my husband was very into his own social life, his two grown children himself, and what was going on in his life. And I felt a lot of the time that I was ignored. A lot of our conversation was about what I was going to do to fix the situation with my kids, which was really, really hard. And he had been interstate working for 10 years, and this actually caused a lot of unrest as well, because he would be gone for the whole week and would come home every second weekend or every weekend. And I had been the mum in control, running everything, superwoman. And he would come in and he'd rearrange the kitchen and he'd start cooking and not ask me what I wanted for dinner. And I used to find it really difficult because I felt like I was put back into a child place, that I had no control over what was sort of like happening in the house. And I still had that super mum hat on. So I found it very difficult to adjust for when he came back. And that made it really hard for him because he, in the end, didn't want to come home. Because I wasn't very welcoming. Because to be honest, it was easier not having him there because I didn't need to change anything and I just kept on going. So that caused a lot of trouble for a couple of years, to be honest. Yeah.
And to be fair, you had all that responsibility on your shoulders. He wasn't there during the week. So you really were the only responsible adult in the family at home. So exactly. I think it's quite, I want to say natural in a way to pick up all of the responsibilities and get on a rhythm with that. And it does feel a little jarring to have someone else come in and rearrange the kitchen. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. And I had to be like that because there was no other choice. I don't have any family in this state. So I was actually on my own with children and working, and I had to get on and do the best that I could do. And he was appreciative that I was like that. But geez, looking back now, I was so controlling, and it makes me feel so sad, actually. I didn't realize.
What do you mean you feel sad? Like, how do you feel sad? Like,
I just don't think I treated him very well, to be honest, back in the day. I mean, I feel so sorry now thinking about, he would be so excited to come home, and it's not easy getting to the airport, getting on a plane, getting all the way back here, where it's only a state away, but it's still, it's still not easy. And then I'd be complaining about the fact that he put the knives in a different position, or that we were having, risotto and I didn't feel like having anything with carbs in it. And yeah, I just think my control was a bit over the top back then, but I didn't realize.
No one had ever taught you intimacy skills, I'm sure, or you would have shown up differently.
Absolutely.
So what happened to make you think, well, we can't go on like this? Was there a moment like that?
Well, to be honest, it wasn't me. It was him. So he came back. He was actually posted back to be in our state, December 2020. And he sent me a text message and he said, I'm posted back at home. He said, but I'm not coming home. He said, I don't want to live with you anymore and I'm going to find somewhere to live. And it was absolutely, honestly, looking back now, it's just the most horrendous time, because even though I knew things weren't great, I didn't think that he would do that.
So you were blindsided by this announcement.
Yeah. But I mean, if you spoke to him, he would say, oh gosh, you knew things weren't good for a while. But I think sometimes we don't recognize how bad our partners can feel sometimes. So yeah, I was extremely shocked. So that was just before Christmas in 2020. He stayed at a friend's place in the city for a couple of weeks, and then I thought, oh, he'll probably come back. He'll realize that, you know, he needs to be at home. But instead, oh, that day was so bad. He ended up coming over to my work, which I work a fair way away from where I live, and he never actually comes to my work. And he came over that Saturday to tell me that he'd rented a house for 12 months. And it was a big 3-story, 2-bathroom place. And we live in an area where there's a lot of young people and a lot of students. So we have an absolute abundance of apartments that are fully furnished. And I just couldn't understand why he had done something that I perceived as being so permanent. He needed to buy new furniture. He needed so many things. And I thought, gosh, why does he need 3 bedrooms? And then I thought, well, he's going to want our youngest son to go and stay with him. So I can remember that day being at work and having to hold myself together for all my clients that were coming in. And I remember just saying to him, oh, well, that's really good. I'm glad that you've got somewhere that's nice to stay. But it was just, oh my gosh, it was so hard to say that. And he said to me, I'm really sad about it. It's not what I wanted, but I have to do this because I can't come home. His last words as he walked off, he said, you know, a 12-month lease doesn't have to be a 12-month lease, though.
Oh.
So I held on to that as thinking, okay, all right, maybe he's just going to see how things go. And he's kind of said to me, well, you know, it doesn't have to be 12 months. But yeah, it was that day was absolutely horrible. I'll never forget it.
It sounds heartbreaking. It sounds devastating.
Yeah.
All right. So he comes and takes his things, and then he's moved out.
Yeah, he took, because he was interstate anyway, he had a lot of stuff where he'd been living in apartments and that his work had paid for. So he already had a lot of stuff, and then he would have taken he probably had half of his stuff here, and then he would have taken a quarter of his clothes and things like that. So he left basic little things, but, you know, his bedside drawer and his bedside table and things like that was all cleared out. But he did leave some things here. So that was back in December. And that's when I can't remember exactly the month that I joined your group. I think it might have been in January, but I was searching online for something because I can remember being in bed. I think it was that night that he came and told me that, and I was choking. I literally could not breathe.
Oh, yeah.
It was the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
So I was so grateful to find your program. So things were as bad as, actually, the other thing that happened too was I had said to him, can we go out for dinner and have a talk? This was actually before he found his rental while he was staying in the city, and he agreed to go out for dinner, and he basically said very little the whole time. We drove in the same car. I was trying to be happy and tell him about our Christmas party at work and all the funny things that had happened and all the rest of it, and he was pretty stony-faced. And when we got in the car, he said to me, I've got to tell you something. I know you're not going to be happy, but I want a divorce.
Oh, wow. This was before.
That was a couple of days. Yeah, before he rented, yeah. And I felt like jumping out of the car, to be honest. Yeah. I was so upset. And he said, and I'm not going to change my mind either.
Oh, we'll see about that. But at the time, though, this must have been just the bottom dropping out of your world.
Yeah. I then started thinking about, oh my gosh, we've only, 3/4 renovated our house. Our youngest son's still only just in the beginning of his high school. I had already been through a divorce, which was absolutely in a horrendous divorce. I know how hard it is on the children. I did not want my son to have to go through what his older siblings had gone through. And then I started thinking about, oh my gosh, he will get a another partner, and they'll want my son, and she'll turn up to, been through all this before, she'll turn up to the sport things, and it's just going to be so awkward, and I don't want to go through that again. It's just the panic was there.
They're having to smile and say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" to the other. Yeah, awful.
It's very, very, very difficult. Yeah.
I bet. Very uncomfortable and kind of draining, it sounds like. So, okay, so you did some Googling and you found something that piqued your interest. What happened next?
So I joined your program and I binge watched every single video. I read your book. I got it on, I can't remember if I got it Kindle. I think I might have got it, read it. I could not wait for it to actually be sent here. I had to read it straight away. So I read it online and I was just like, oh my gosh, I've been doing so many wrong things. The controlling was massive. The always needing to be right in arguments, oh gosh, so much. And the calls that I listened to gave me so much hope that I could be one of the women that actually turned this around.
It's kind of a painful moment. Like you sound very accountable now, which I love. It's very attractive. But the part where you're saying, "Oh, this is what I've done. I recognize this now." That's tough, isn't it? How did you get through that?
So tough, yeah. Because I knew that I had caused, I reckon, 95% of the issues I really had. I saw it so clearly, and it did cause me to panic a lot too, though, because I thought, oh my gosh, I self-sabotaged in a way my marriage. It didn't have to be like this, and had I have acted differently, I wouldn't be in this situation. But that kind of panic, that I really wanted a second chance to be able to prove that I could improve this and that I wasn't that person.
Yeah. And so it sounds like some fear came up that you weren't going to get that opportunity.
Yes.
Especially when he already said, "I'm not going to change my mind."
Totally. And I know what he's like. He's very stubborn. He's very, he doesn't have any duct tape, to be honest. He's very, he'll just say things as they are. And he's not someone that minces words. I knew he was serious. And the fact that he had rented this big house, it was only 500 meters from our house, but I knew he meant business.
So how did you find hope that there was going to be a second chance?
In the beginning, I actually had a thought about some of these things before our interview about some of the skills, and probably the first two skills that I tried was self-care and relinquishing control. So in the past, and I think this shocked him actually, because in the past, if this had have happened, I would have been calling him and begging and pleading and crying. And then when I felt that I was getting nowhere, I probably would have started saying some horrible things about him, which a lot of people do when they're in
That's right. Yeah. I relate to that. Yes.
Yeah. And I almost think that he was expecting that. So the self-care, I started, I haven't gym membership that I've had for years, but I decided that I just couldn't get there in the end with my work being busier. So I started exercising at home, and then I started beautiful bubble baths at night. I started planning things in advance with friends. So we had social things to go to. I started to get really interested in clothes, spend a bit of money on, and always dressing really well wherever I went. So sort of like really investing in myself and relinquishing control over what he was doing. Okay, he's rented a 3-bedroom house. He's got all this furniture that he's had to buy. Oh, well, it's not me. It's not my decision. It's his decision. I can stay on my own paper. I don't think it's the right decision, but he owns it. I've always felt so responsible before when he would make a decision that I didn't think was good. And then I'd be like, I'd start panicking that was the wrong decision. And I just let it all go. And I just like, you know what? It's his choice, not mine.
Wow.
And if he makes a mistake, that's his, it's on his paper.
And how did he respond to all this? Because this was like a whole new Karen from what he was used to.
Definitely it was. So in the beginning, he would he would message me and he would say, he's a really, really good cook and he loves cooking. And it's actually a terrible thing, but it used to really annoy me because I felt that he was doing it because he didn't think that I was a good cook, instead of actually realizing that's his
love language. It's to feed you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, definitely. And he's absolutely the best cook I've ever come across. And he would say to me, I know you're working really late tonight. I'll come over and I'll cook dinner for our son. So I would be like, okay, that's fine. You can come over and cook for him. So I would text my son when I was leaving home and I'd say, his dad's still there? And I would say probably for the first 4 months, he'd say no. He's cooked dinner and he's gone. So he would clear off by the time that he knew that I was due to come home from work because he didn't want to see me. I just, that guy, and then I would often send him a text message and say, thank you so much for cooking dinner for our son. He really liked it and it's good for him to see you, and all this type of stuff. And then I would go and make myself some toast or something because he never made anything for me. And then over the next couple of months, he then would send me a message and he would say, hey, you're going to be late. Do you want dinner? I was thinking of making spaghetti. Would you like some as well? And then 9 times out of 10, I didn't want it, but I would say, sure, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thanks for thinking of me. I would love that. So he would leave food for me. And then it progressed to him actually being there when I got home and him wanting to talk to me. And then as time went on over that year, he was spending more and more time and he was making excuses to actually come over, to be honest. There was always some reason why he needed to come over, and I just let him come and go. I never pleaded with him. I never asked him when he was coming over next. I let him have complete free reign over what he wanted to do.
Did you ever see his head kind of explode with, wondering what had happened? Because it was like you had a personality transplant.
Yeah.
Sounds like, right? So
it so was. And one of the best things to do is not to tell your husband you're doing this program. So my husband has absolutely no idea I have done this.
To this day.
To this day. Because I really feel that it would have diminished a lot of the things that I was doing, because I know him, he would have said, oh, you're only doing that just because they tell you to do it, or that's just part of the course. So I think it really is important with men that are like my husband to not tell them and to do this. So I think it was like so gradual, and I think there was so many things that happened over that time that he knows things were different and better, but it wasn't just like a thunderbolt that happened in 2 minutes. So I don't think he kind of like realized a lot straight away.
Until you were there eating the spaghetti, he had no idea that you'd done. So I love that. So, it was really just all about you. He made no conscious effort to fix your marriage. Only Carrie.
No, not one.
Of the marriage.
Not one.
Yeah.
Not one conscious effort, no.
Yeah, he didn't read a book or go to counseling or nothing.
Nothing.
So you did this single-handedly.
Completely, 100%. I think I actually did say to him in the beginning, oh gosh, we haven't even been to counseling, we've been to nothing. He's like, no, I told you we're getting a divorce, it's over, there's nothing, it's done.
So it seemed pretty hopeless at that point. I mean, I can imagine it must have seemed.
Oh, completely.
Okay, so you were doing some gratitude and you were receiving his dinner offers and letting him come over and everything. And so what else were you doing differently than you had been?
Do you know what the last skill that I tried on him, and I don't know why I didn't do it earlier, was the SFP. For some reason, I never really did that, but I got the best result when I actually started doing it. Okay. And he even said to me, I love those self-fulfilling prophecies. They're great. He said, I'm going to try them on you. So he knew enough that he knew what that was, which was really funny. But in retrospect, I probably should have tried that a little bit earlier because I did get such a good result. But having said that, I think you don't want to do every single skill in like 1 second, like a thunderbolt, that they become a bit overwhelmed and then it's a bit obvious that you're doing something completely different.
Okay.
So I think kind of
Gotcha.
like a gradual thing is good. So yes, I did do that, and definitely duct tape. That was a big thing because I was one of those people that would fight to the end because I knew I was right. And
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, like I was, but now I just think, you know what, it's not worth it. What does it matter if I'm right or wrong?
Just
He's never
let
going
it
to,
go. Yeah.
yeah, let it go. He's never probably going to see that I was right anyway. So what does it matter? So sometimes I just, now I don't even go there. It's not worth it.
Do you ever feel like though that maybe you're losing your own voice in that?
No, I think I've actually got more of a voice. It's such an interesting thing because when you first read that book, you can kind of think, oh, I don't know about this. Like I'm a very independent, self-assured woman, and I'm not sure about some of these things, but it actually does exactly the opposite. And I've got way more say in how things work, including what we eat, everything than I've ever had before. So
Well, I love that. I love that. And you did some work around receiving, I think, as well. Is that right?
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. There was something that I read where someone had written and they said, if your mother or your friend had given you a present and you didn't like it, you would never tell them that you didn't like it. You would say, thank you so much. That's lovely. I love it. And then you may not wear it or whatever. So sometimes he would give me presents that weren't things that I could use or wear. And I, I didn't say it nastily, but I wasn't over grateful.
Sure. Yeah.
And I thought, my gosh, that is so true. I wouldn't do that for anyone else. So why would I do that for him? So once he's actually really quite generous, and he used to give me so many compliments, and I just used to blow them off. And then he stopped.
Mm.
And then I was like, oh, actually, I really did like getting compliments, and I did really like getting those flowers and things like that he used to get me. And yeah, I didn't realize until he didn't do it anymore. But yeah, I started to become really appreciative and actually accepted compliments and gifts. And I could see that he loved it.
He loved it.
Yeah.
So so you've got new opportunities. How did you make those opportunities come back? Because I think sometimes women will say, oh, there's nothing to receive. He's not giving anything. He's not complimenting me anymore. He doesn't get me gifts.
Any little thing that he did, whether it was taking the garbage out to making dinner for my son, taking him to his sport training, any little thing that he did, I appreciated. And he's a real man's man. He works in a very male-dominated industry. The respect part of it is massive for him. And I wasn't really respectful in the past. So the fact that I was recognizing all those little things, he just puffed up. I saw his chest, he loved it. And it inspired him then to do more. He really did like the fact that I was appreciative.
I love that. So, and you threw yourself into your own life in a pretty big way
I
as
think
part of,
that's a really, really important thing because, I mean, I imagine a lot of men are like this. The more needier I was, the more on his paper I was, I just would have pushed him away. And being so independent and really into work. And I mean, I've got to the stage now where I earn more money than him, which is fantastic. He's really proud of that. But, you know, I think that was a big pull for him was that I was not calling him all the time. To be honest, I don't really need him because I am self-sufficient. I can pay for everything myself, and I can have my own life, and he knows that. But I do want him in my life.
Don't need him,
And
but you want him. Yes.
yeah, and I think that was a big pull for him was that he knew that I didn't need him. And he wants to be needed, but I think he just didn't want me to be too needy where he felt that, he's like babysitting me or had to do this because she wants me to do this or whatever. It was so important to be on my own page.
So, and I know for me, like when I'm needy, it's usually a complaint in a way, right? There's not like, there's a lot of things that I need my husband for. But if I'm not complaining about it, it doesn't come off as needy. And it comes off as an opportunity for him to be my hero. And that's what I think I hear you saying too.
And I think one of the things, I did not know this, but something was revealed this year. And I'm so grateful I didn't know when I was actually going through the program. But I have a feeling that that was a massive pull, the fact that I wasn't over the top needing him and whinging and complaining the whole time. And he was able to make a decision for himself.
Yeah. So tell me about that. What was revealed?
So, I mean, it's still kind of fresh. It's about 3 months ago he told me that there was another woman, which was a massive shock to me because I didn't pick it. There's absolutely nothing that he did or said in that year that would have led me to think that he had another woman. Absolutely not one clue. And as the year went on, he spent more and more and more time with us. So I was just, I couldn't believe it. In fact, I did tell my mum for some support. And when I told my mum, she thought he'd made it up.
Yeah.
Because she just couldn't, she's like, from what you're telling me, I can't understand how he actually had time to do this and so forth. But I'm so grateful I didn't know. And this is why I think I really agree with your other woman's scenario where you don't shop for pain and you don't give them any oxygen, because I was able to be myself. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't pushing him, anything like that. And I drew him to me for me, like with all my skills for me. Whereas had I have known about her, I would have been jealous and all those things would have probably gone out the window. So I'm so grateful that I didn't. And I have the impression from the little bits that I know was that she did completely the opposite. So she was very jealous and very controlling. Everything that you taught us not to be.
We like have that expression that a wife with the intimacy skills trumps a mistress every day of the week and twice on Sundays. So she was unskilled and you were very skilled, and you got this gift of ignorance, it sounds like. So it was easy to not give her oxygen because you didn't know about her. So
I didn't know about her, yeah. And then it was when I did know about, I mean, gosh, that was the second, it was as a pain, if not more painful actually than when he left, to be honest. It's something that you can't even describe how bad it was. And what came out of his mouth was, and I did say to him a couple of weeks after, what the hell did you say? It was the worst thing possible he could have said to me. He said to me that he loved her and he wanted to be with her.
Oh, ouch.
And he has later said to me that he has no recollection of what the hell he said because he said he was sweating, he was shaking, he just had no idea what blurted out of his mouth. And it was probably like the worst thing he could have said to me, to be honest.
Yes.
And I didn't sleep. That probably the only time in my whole life I've never slept, not even one iota of sleep that night. Got up the next morning to a barrage of text messages from him saying, I'm so sorry about, what you found out, but you deserve to know, and I can't live with myself anymore for what I've done. And we need to make some decisions, and you're going to be the one that gets to make the decision whether you want me back. We work on this and we stay together, whether we work on it and I stay where I am in the rental property, or I understand if you don't want me back.
So what a change, what a shift from I want a divorce and I won't change my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly look back now and I think what happened was I don't know anything about what happened with this other person, but I do believe that it was probably at the beginning of the year when he left, and he did not expect me to behave like I did this year. And so in his mind, he's like, it's over. We're getting a divorce. I'm free to see other people because nothing's ever going to change. Things are as bad as it, it's just horrendous. We're never going to get out of this. And I drew him back with all the skills that I had learned. And in the end, he ended up completely discommunicating from this person. And I was just going to say he's so different. I mean, there were some weird things that did happen last year that, looking back now, I know what I know. I think we're a little bit weird about him saying things, a couple of things that he would say and things that I didn't think were weird at the time, but now looking back, I can think that was now why he was saying them. But yeah, he's so different now, completely different.
Wow. So your husband has also changed.
Yes.
But he didn't read a book or practice
No.
skills. How is he different?
And he refused to do anything. I know this is what the incredible thing is. I mean, it's just, unless you really knew my story or you're in the program or something and have heard these type of things before, you literally would not believe that it's actually possible to change someone without them knowing. He is like what we were when we first met. So we were first boyfriend and girlfriend. So we met at school when we were 16, and through circumstances back in the day, he had to move to be with his dad, and we lost contact, and then sort of reconnected throughout the years, and we both married different people, and then down the track we reconnected and got together. So that was 17 years ago. So it's very similar, if not better, than what it was when we first reconnected 17 years ago.
Wow.
Which
incredible.
I cannot believe I'm saying this.
No, it's a miracle, isn't it? Does that sound miraculous?
Absolute miracle.
Absolutely.
It is.
And yet you did it. I give you all the credit. You fixed your family.
I know. I'm just so grateful. And my son is so happy because he saw what his older brothers went through and he didn't want that.
No. How has this impacted him?
He's heaps happier. He loves having his dad around. He loves having him more around because he was, he had limited time because he was working interstate for a fair few of my son's developmental years. So yeah, he's so much happier. And one thing I did want to say too is that things do happen and they do come up. Like we had a little incident on the weekend where something came up, and life is not perfect. And even when things are doing really well, there are going to be things that happen. And the thing that one of my friends who's in this program said to me, and it was fantastic, she said, the skills are for getting back on track as well. They're not just for the beginning part of it. And we were able to get right. There was actually 2 incidences on the weekend, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. And they could have, in the past, it would have been cold wars for days over it. And we were able to get back on track almost immediately.
Wow. How did you do that? What skills did you reach for? How did you get everything back on track?
A bit of duct tape. I did apologise. I used some gratitude. And one of the hardest skills I have found is a vulnerability because I've got a bit of pride. So I do find, and I don't like the thought of being rejected. So sometimes I do find it hard to be quite vulnerable. And I did that both times and it worked beautifully with him.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah. The second incident was when on Sunday, he said he was going for a motorbike ride, and I asked him where he was going, and he said he didn't know where he was going. And then he sent me a text a couple of, about half an hour later, and said that he was at a friend's place and going to have a beer. And that just sent the biggest shockwaves through me because that's exactly what he was doing, I think, when he was seeing the other woman. And I didn't know at the time. I always thought he was at his friend's place. So I texted him back and I said, oh, please don't do that. And he goes, what? It's fine. It's fine. And that could have blown out to be something massive that ended up being, he said, I'm really sorry. I should have told you where I was going. He goes, but honestly, I didn't know where I was going. I just kept on driving and I ended up near him and I thought I'd call in and see him. He goes, I genuinely was there. I really was, but I understand that you would find that really difficult because of the past and so forth. And that would not have ended up like that back in the day.
Wow. So sweet. So you were feeling fearful and he wanted to protect you, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing.
It is. And he said to me, I wouldn't be doing all this. I wouldn't be back here. He said, I had a choice to be with someone else. And he said, I don't want to be with her. I want to be with you. So he said, why would I be doing all this if I was sneaking out? So he goes, she's not in my life at all.
Wow.
And yeah.
And you feel, and you trust that.
I do. It is hard. It is definitely really hard. But one of the things that my mother said to me, which was really cute, she said to me, you know, I don't like what he did, but I've got to tell you something. She goes, I admire the fact that he came clean. He didn't get caught. He actually, I don't know whether he would have got caught because we had absolutely no idea. It was the fact that he came out and he told you.
Yeah. So he seems trustworthy because he came
And
clean.
he ran the chance when he told me of me leaving.
Yeah. How are you a different woman than you were before?
I think I'm much calmer. I've used a lot of the skills with my children, my young adult children as well. And that has worked beautifully for them because I think I was a bit of a mother bear and a bit controlling with their lives because I really wanted my children to follow paths that I did and all the rest of it. And they're their own people and their life is theirs. And so I think I probably, had I continued going the way I was going, I would have maybe had a bit of an estranged relationship perhaps with some of them for being so controlling. They wouldn't have told me a lot of things and so forth. So that's been really good. So I think I'm just so much calmer. And I'm not so stressed anymore because I don't have to be responsible for other people's decisions and the mistakes that they make. The self-care part of it, I cannot understand how I didn't know about self-care. Like it's just so simple, but it just makes such a big difference. And of course, like the duct tape, I do that at work if things happen and in the past maybe I would have said something. Now I'm just like, oh, it's not even worth it. It's really not a big deal. So just completely different.
So you're using the intimacy skills as a mother, also at work, it sounds like.
Completely. Yeah. You can use it with absolutely everybody. They're just, honestly, life's changing for me. It's just so grateful that I actually did do this program because I can honestly say I would not be in the situation that I'm in now had I not done it.
And which program did you join? Was it Ridiculously Happy Wife?
Yes.
Okay.
I loved reading other people's stories and I learned so many things from other people.
Yes. Yeah, that's the power of the group. That's why we all do this together. The power of the connection framework, I call it, right? Of being able to hear other people's stories, being able to pay it forward like you're doing right now, having a coach, of course, and then having the skills are those are the four pillars. And so you availed yourself of all of them, it sounds like.
Yeah. And even if I was reading something that someone had gone through and I hadn't gone through something like that, 9 times out of 10, something would pop up and I think, oh, I remember that lady mentioned something about whatever. I'm going to try this, this, and this. So it just, even though it's not 100% maybe applicable to you, it may be down the track. And of course, I never, ever, ever expected that I was going to have another woman in my life. And I remember reading so many posts about people that had other women and thinking, gosh, I must be about the only person here that doesn't have one, and then blow me down. Of course I did, just didn't know. And then I was able to I already knew about the no oxygen. I already knew about all of that, which was great. So that definitely helped.
Yes, you were already kind of in a good position to hear terrible news. Still terrible news, but you were well prepared.
To be honest, though, as weird and maybe as strange other people not in the program hearing this would feel with me saying this, is that I do think the other woman was the worst thing that ever happened, but also the best thing that ever happened.
Tell me about that.
Because I think it gave the biggest shift. And what my husband said to me, so as I know, I don't know very many details about this person at all, but he said to me, the two things that he said to me was she wasn't you and was never going to be you. And the other thing he said was, I just didn't want to lose you. And I don't think he realized what it was like to lose me and all the subsequent things with it. And it gave him a shock because he was at a crossroad with her. Whereas had she have not been there, I don't know. I just don't think it's as forceful perhaps in a way. So yes, it was the worst thing, but honestly the best thing that ever happened.
So if there's a woman listening who has another woman challenge that she's dealing with, like you had, it sounds like you're almost saying this can help you.
It can. It definitely can. And I do think there are a lot of men out there that think the grass is greener on the other side. And if you've got the skills and they don't, I mean, you are so far ahead, because if your husband's like mine and hates to be controlled and wants to make decisions for him without being influenced by anyone else, the skills are going to make a biggest difference, because 9 times out of 10, the unskilled other woman is going to be doing the complete opposite, and they're going to push them away. And yeah, so it was, oh my gosh, I can't even believe how I've coped. And he has, we've had probably 3 meltdowns over it. Don't get me wrong, it's not the easiest thing in the world, absolutely, but he has said to me, I can't believe like how you've coped with it. And I wouldn't have been able to cope without the skills, because I mean, I've only told a few people, because I don't want my work people, I don't want a lot of people to know about what he did, because I know that they will completely judge him and not be nice to him, basically. So the general population out there, if I told them that I was accepting my husband back after he had had an affair, the majority of women would be like, oh my God, are you crazy? What are you doing? Don't you have any respect for yourself, and so forth?
Yeah.
So it's so wonderful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the general consensus of people. However, in this program, you come across so many women that are in this situation that can put their marriages back together and be better than ever with another woman. It gives you so much hope, because if I hadn't have been in this program, I would have presumed that that meant the marriage was over, because that's what happens.
Yeah. That's sort of the training we all get, the messaging out in the world is that must be the end. Then to be self-respecting, you have to leave now.
Exactly. So, and they're going to do it again. Once a cheater, always a cheater.
Oh, yeah.
They're never going to be
again. Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it had nothing to do with you or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So it does feel like an amazing accomplishment, but I get it. It's a secret accomplishment in a way. It's nothing you can celebrate out in the world, but we certainly, I get to celebrate it with you. And I love that. I feel honored to get to witness your journey. And of course, now you're sharing it in a semi-public situation here, but everyone who's listening to this podcast is also wanting to prioritize her marriage and may have similar challenges. So we can understand and appreciate, though, how much courage, how much commitment, how much accountability you have shown to get this incredible outcome.
And I think accountability is a big thing, particularly when there is another woman, because there are so much information out there where, as you say, it's all the man's fault for having the affair and all the rest of it. But my husband really appreciated the fact that I said that I know that I was to blame for a lot of the reasons why he sought comfort with someone else. And he was not expecting that at all. And he felt so bad about it himself. He was really grateful that I took her some, whilst I didn't act out, we were in the same marriage and I didn't act out the way that he did. He wasn't 100% to blame, because had things been good with us, he wouldn't have done it. And I know that. And he did try many times to sort of like get our marriage back on track and so forth. So
wow. So I want to hear that again. You said to him, I know I'm to blame. Is that right?
Partly to blame, not 100%, of course, but yeah, partly to blame for the reasons why, you did what you did. And it's absolutely so true.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible humility and accountability, unbelievable accountability. And how did you get there? How did you get to that spot?
When I thought about it, and when he said to me, she's not you, and he said, I tried so hard to fix what was wrong in our marriage and it just, nothing was working and so forth. I started to think back to the past and I thought, gosh, he did. He did try so hard. And then in the end, like, he gave up. But I know that he would not have sought someone else had I have been the way I am now. And it's just a realization of what your part to play with the downfall of your marriage is. And it doesn't happen in isolation. And it was a slow burn. It wasn't something that happened in 5 minutes. It had happened like a a slow downward spiral over several years.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, he always has a choice how he's going to behave, right? You're not responsible for his actions.
No,
You're just taking responsibility for whatever contribution the way you were showing up made to the situation.
that's
Right. I
right.
just want to clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But beautiful, very impressive, really.
One of the other things that I learned too was that when I was growing up, my mum was quite controlling now when I look back, sort of like ran the whole family, and she prioritized her four children over my dad. And my dad was the type of man who was very good at his work and spent many, many hours doing his job and all the rest of it. So he needed mum to look after us, and he was more than happy to have her prioritize us because he couldn't look after us. So that worked perfectly for them. So when I went into this marriage, I kind of replicated a lot of what my mum did because that's how I was brought up. And it wasn't until these skills that I realized that I did actually put my kids before my husband, because that's what my mum had done. My husband's completely different, a polar opposite to my dad. He was not someone that was ever going to be okay with that. Not that he didn't want me to ever do anything for the kids or whatever, but he saw the marriage as being the scaffolding for the family and the most important, and that everything draws from that. And if I had my time again, and what I would advise my children to do is to be very, very mindful of the fact that your marriage should be the number one thing, and everything else follows from it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think it is enormously tempting to, what's the expression, that you respect the children instead of the husband, I guess, or you honor the
Mm.
children instead of the husband, and then something with the husband. I forget the rest of the expression. But yeah, let's talk about what you would say to yourself if you could go back in time. What do you think you would say to Karen if you could tell her what you know now?
I would say don't give up. Because there were so many times I wanted to give up. And sometimes, as much as it's beautiful that people put really inspiring, fantastic, positive stories in the Facebook forum, sometimes those stories are like, oh, everyone else is doing really well and I'm not getting the same result. And sometimes it made me feel worse about my situation. Having said that, it was always beautiful that when things were not good and you wrote something in, you'd get a barrage of beautiful messages from other people that were very uplifting and so forth. But yeah, my advice would be not to give up, to keep on going, and, that have faith that these skills really do work. And one of the things that did keep me going was, at the end of the day, if my marriage isn't restored, I'm going to be okay, because I can follow these skills and I know that I will be okay. But yeah, I think the biggest thing would be to keep on going, because you're going to have some times where things aren't great. And the other thing is, it takes time. It takes time. Like it took me, over a year. It took a slow burn for the marriage to deteriorate. It's not going to be a quick fix. And I think sometimes I do read that some people do expect a quick fix, but it takes time. And the longer it takes, in a way, I think the better, because then it's not a quick, oh my God, my wife must be doing something because she's completely different, that you're doing every single skill in one sort of like text message type of thing. It's nice to have it as a gradual thing. And I wish I had have known that it was going to take time.
Yes. And he was gone for the whole 12 months, it sounds like, before he came.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we had the lease for the 12 months. And then interestingly enough, the people that leased the house said the house got sold, and then the new owner said they actually wanted to move in. So I was kind of lucky in a way. I mean, it was just grace of God that happened, because that lease did expire in 12 months. So he was not only at a crossroad with his other woman, but he was also a crossroad with, my God, where am I going to live? Because he didn't have the option to continue living there. So he would have had to have sourced somewhere else.
He would have had to move one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that worked out really quite well. But yeah, I just wish I had have had a bit more faith over fear at times.
But the illusion was very real at the time. He was saying, "This, I'm not changing my mind. I got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with
yeah,
a 1-year lease. There's no hope." So what mere mortal woman, I mean, I don't even know how you did choose your faith as much as you did, because clearly you chose your faith.
Yeah, it was, it wasn't easy that whole time, but I'm so grateful that I've gone through the hardest year of my life. But I think it was probably the best year in a way as well, because things are so much better. I can't even, this time last year, I was thinking about Easter last year when I actually spent Easter by myself. And a few other things that happened. And I thought, gosh, if I could have looked forward and realized where I would have been this next Easter, I would have gone, no way. There's no way that would have happened. So it's amazing.
So you spent Easter with your husband
I did.
And your son. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. And he actually bought me an Easter egg that I like, whereas last year he bought me this like random egg, and he took my son out and left me at home by myself. He did not want to, have me go to his children's celebration that they had. And then this year we actually had it at our house. So,
so you are the family gathering house again.
Yeah, which we always were, but then of course last year we certainly weren't. It has been a really good example for their adult children too, because we've got 5 adult children between ourselves, ranging from 27 to 20. And I think it's really good for them to experience what forgiveness is like and how you can actually be responsible for your own behaviour, and how something that I did say to my eldest son was that my husband's a really good person that made a bad mistake, and that we can all make mistakes, but it doesn't need to define you for the rest of your life. And I think they're really good life skills for the kids to have learned as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful. So inspiring to hear how your whole family has benefited from you going on this journey and being so committed to it.
We're still not there with my children and my husband reconnecting with their relationship, but I know that it's not going to be something that's quick, and they don't live with us anyway. So it is going to be something that both my husband and particularly my eldest son have spoken individually to me about, and is on the cards to happen over the next couple of years to get some type of relationship back between those two, which neither of them said that they would have done before I actually started the program. So the fact that they're both agreeing that they will meet halfway is massive.
It is massive. And once again, I give you all the credit for creating that breakthrough in those relationships too, even though I hear it's not where you want it to be, but I also hear that you have tremendous hope.
Yeah, I do. Definitely.
Well, Karen, thank you so much. These are very personal things you shared with us, very private, and yet so valuable for everyone to get to hear, for me to get to hear. I'm inspired. I'm encouraged. And I thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Laura. It was lovely to meet you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me in a snit this week arrived via email from another author that I subscribe to, who decided to write a relationship book. So this author had the gall to send me this advice with a totally straight face, never dreaming that it would in any way win my infamous award. And that just aggravates me no end. Not that this author knows me or realizes that I'm on the email list, but that has not stopped me from getting worked up anyway over this stinky advice. The subject of the email is, "This is the simple way to prevent divorce." But guess what, listeners? You've totally already heard this simple advice 10,000 times or so, but that does not make it true. It's totally not the way to prevent divorce, and it's cruel to tell people that it is. I tried it already, and it resulted in wall-to-wall hostility with occasional cold wars and a significant risk of divorce. So here's what the author wrote, quote, "A lot of people fear that if they raise issues with their partner, it can lead to arguing and that will end the relationship. So they stay silent." The author goes on to say, complaining in the big picture is actually a positive. It gets issues out in the open where they can be resolved. Complaining is actually healthy for a marriage. End quote. I am not making this up. I remember thinking that the only choices in my marriage were to either complain or just bottle up my seething resentment. So, of course, I complained, and I also seethed with resentment because complaining didn't accomplish anything beneficial. But the really infuriating thing about this relationship advice for me is that it propagates this lie that there's only two choices, right? There's complaining or there's seething with resentment. There's A or B. Those are the only two choices. Either blurt out everything that's wrong or just roll your eyes back in your head until they stay there permanently. That's a false choice. It's like if you went to a pizza place and the only options for toppings were either worms or dirt. And you might pick dirt and say, well, that's much better than worms, but that doesn't make it good. And those aren't the only available toppings for pizza anyway. There are better options. One would be to express your desires. So instead of saying, you left the kitchen a mess, which is a complaint, which means no one can even really hear it, you could say, I would love a clean kitchen. And then your husband knows how to make you happy. He knows what you would love. And since he is wired to make you happy, that's inspiring to him. I did a little research on that just to double check tonight. And I asked John, my husband, if that was true, that saying, I would love a clean kitchen is inspiring to a husband. And he goes, oh, yeah, yes, it is. Right? Isn't that crazy? Anyway, complaints, those are just lazy desires. Right? You can flip your complaint, make it a desire. I remember wanting things and just being too scared to honor them because I thought I would sound entitled or I thought I would sound selfish. So I complained, which was lazy, cowardly, and completely repelling. Unlike complaining, expressing desires requires courage. It can also take a little practice if no one has ever taught you how to do it. It's nice to have support, maybe a coach who can help you word your desire so that it's clean and free from manipulation or control. That's when it's most effective. But even a clumsy desire beats the heck out of a well-stated complaint in every matchup ever since the beginning of time. Amen. Just knowing I have to listen to myself, I would rather hear myself saying what I would love than moaning about the trash being full. I'd rather have dirt pizza than going back to complaining now that I know how to move mountains without moving a muscle. If complaining was healthy for a marriage, I would have had the healthiest marriage in the bad old days because I complained a lot. And when that didn't work, I complained more loudly and dramatically. And that still didn't work. I didn't know I had another choice. And with so much dim-witted relationship advice circulating, like complaining is healthy for your marriage, millions of other women don't know either. Imagine thinking, I'm going to try this complaining thing to make my marriage last. and saying, you didn't take out the trash, and having your husband do what most mere mortal men do when you complain, which is tune you out and possibly let the trash pile up for a while. So discouraging, right? Makes it seem like he's the one with the problem. Worst of all, though, complaining is a way of focusing on what you don't want. And that means you're going to experience more of it because what you focus on increases. You're likely to have messy kitchens and overflowing trash cans because that's where you're pointing your manifester. And you are a powerful manifester. So for those reasons, the advice that complaining is healthy for your marriage is the very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share 5 ways to be supportive in a relationship. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that John and I used to be in a neurotic folk rock band together. He was the folk rock part.